All right.
There we go.
Woo! Very exciting. Hey, everyone. So this is new for BMC and BMC's world. We are live across 3 different channels right now. So if you're a member of our Facebook group, hey mamas, if you are a person who follows us on our public Facebook page, hi, hello. And if you are one of like the 4 people that know that we have a YouTube channel, I keep forgetting to promote that we have one, then welcome, YouTubers. Really excited to have this conversation today. Very timely. It's an organization that's near and dear to my heart. Oh, I forgot to look for my certificate. Chatting with Kids Help Phone today in terms of mental health and access and resources. We now all need it more than ever, and things that are new that are coming up that you probably don't know about, because when you hear Kids Help Phone, you're like, kids, what does that have to do with anyone who's not a kid? So Tamar, please welcome her. This is me clapping for her. And yeah, drop your small bio on us. I like letting people introduce themselves because I feel like my mom's hear me enough.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name's Tamar Brannigan, and I work with Kids Help Phone. So I am one of the managers of community crisis responders, which means that I work with the community texting team. So that's one of the new things about Kids Help Phone. So if you don't know, Kids Help Phone has been around for more than 30 years now, launched in 1989, same year that I was born, which makes it easy to remember for me. But Kids Help Phone, yeah, it's known primarily as a phone counseling service, right? So if you're familiar with it from a while back, that's might be something that you know best, and that's one of our amazing services, but definitely not all of them. So as times have changed, as the way people communicate changed, we've also introduced texting. So I began with Kids Help Phone when it launched, when the texting service launched about 2 years ago. And I started with them as a supervisor and have moved on as a manager now, working with all of our lovely volunteers. But my personal background is in education and support work, counseling. So I also work as a professor, teaching counseling skills to women who are facing violence and abuse. And I have worked for a long time in the queer community in Toronto and in Ontario, and also have a background working with young people facing homelessness, with mental health issues, and also disabilities of various types.
Awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
So basically, she's a girl that knows what she's talking about.
I try.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So before I start getting into the questions, I'll say that this is a cool full circle moment for me. Kids Help Phone, they DM me about a post that I've written for CBC parents, and I was like, hey, this is so cool. I was an ambassador for Kids Help Phone back in high school. So I graduated high school in 1998, and I still have my certificate somewhere, actually, to be honest. I'm going to find it and I'll post it. And so that's how this relationship resurrected. And of course, it's super relevant to what we do. Of course, my biggest thing at BMC, if you know us or if you don't and you're new to us, is providing these resources, that are culturally relevant. And sometimes things are universal. Of course, Kids Help Phone is for all kids coast to coast to coast in the country, both French and English. You've seen their logos on the Nestle Kit Kat bars and stuff. So I'm really looking forward to this, because I know that there's so much anxiety in terms of, not even just necessarily just going back to school, if they're going back to school, just period. And so really this conversation is to learn a little bit more about what Kids Help Phone does, how you can access their services, new things that they're doing for parents as well as kids. And, just really talk through, what's happening, especially with our kids. It's really important to think about, as a parent, we're stressed about COVID. Kids are just as stressed, and they're stressing in different ways. I think it was Sick Kids Hospital today that just said that they're seeing a huge spike in psychological cases enter their doors. So that, it has to be real bad for a parent to pick their kid up and transport them all the way to sick kids. So we can tell that it's really, a huge thing. So how has it been for Kids Help Phone in terms of when COVID hit? Like, I'm sure your numbers went from 5 million to 50.
Absolutely. So, COVID hit, we've heard this everywhere. These are unprecedented times. And one thing that Kids Help Phone really prides itself on is being responsive. So when things happen, whether it's in a small city, whether there's an incident happening, or whether it's nationwide, we've been able to pivot the way that we support people in order to do that job really well. So COVID hit. Things began to shut down, and we saw a massive spike in things like anxiety and stress, just like you mentioned, but also in those feelings of isolation. Rather than seeing a ton of bullying happen because kids were in school, we saw a spike in things like abuse that they're facing within the home. So people reached out in a number of ways. Our volume of texters really went up, but what was amazing was that we also had this massive spike in the number of people who reached out wanting to support as volunteers.
No.
So we have had a massive outpouring of support to really meet the needs of people who need that help. Kids Help Phone is known best for supporting young people. From young kids all the way up to youth, young adults. We've been there for them for over 30 years. But what's been really cool is because we know that it's not just kids who have been so impacted by this crisis, it's also adults, it is parents, of course. We wanted to make sure that we're supporting them too. Same with frontline responders who have, just done such an incredible but such a taxing job of being right in front of all of this work. And so we actually pivoted to opening up a new support line. So people can text in at 741-741 of all ages, adults, frontline responders, parents, and get support from our crisis response team.
Which is like, first of all, so the branding person in me says, so you're starting to offer parent support. Are you guys going to be changing your name?
That's a great question. We are still going to be Kids Help Phone. Our texting service is actually a crisis text line powered by Kids Help Phone. So we are kind of this combination of new technology that allows people to reach us via text, powered by all of the experience and the skill set that Kids Help Phone has had for such a long time. There's also different ways for people to reach out. So we actually were able to partner with a number of amazing organizations and set up a portal online. So that's Wellness Together Canada, and people can get in touch with us through that and also receive a bunch of really amazing resources to help with their mental health.
Nice. Mm-hmm. That's great. I think that, it's nice to know that there's something out there for us as parents. In these unprecedented times, I really need another word for unprecedented, that we're trying to become teachers, and we're nurses, and we're parents, and we're still employees, and some of us are employers, and some people are still going to work, especially frontline workers in grocery stores and all these other places. And so it's nice to know that there is an available resources that parents can text into, because of course, we might be chatting with our kids when they're telling us the 14th story or watching the 17th episode of Bubble Buddies, but still being like, hey, like I'm really struggling with my own anxiety or whatever it is. So what are some of the most requested, topics that you're really seeing in terms of from parents specifically?
Yes. So you know what? The things that people have been reaching out about more lately have been isolation, anxiety, stress, substance use and abuse, physical abuse. But the biggest thing that we have seen right now is eating and body image. So that's been huge with people staying home. And I think, what you were saying, there's so much change and people feel really out of control. So they're coping with that in different ways. in terms of adults, the things that they reach out about are just as diverse as the things that kids reach out about. Sometimes they're stressed about, putting their kids back to school. They're stressed about work and relationships. So I don't think that there is any singular topic, and that's absolutely okay, because one of the things that the misconceptions that people have is that in order for them to reach out, they need to be in a state of crisis. Or it needs to be the worst day that they've had. But that is not true. We're around 24/7, not just to talk about crisis, but anything that's on your mind that you're struggling with or you need someone to process with. Isolation is such a massive issue, and especially when people have been, physically distancing and hopefully not social distancing. But we want to be a point of connection for people.
No, that's great. And, I think, so what was the impetus? Because of course, this parent text line launched before COVID hit. So was there any particular reasoning why we're like, hey, let's include the parents as well?
Yeah. So historically, we've been an organization who supports young people. That's where a lot of our resources are. If you look on our website, you will see a ton of articles that are specific to young people. And we really want to make sure that they are accessible to young people. But as we've noticed, especially with our texting line, we've had older people, parents, adults are reaching out. So that has always been something that on our texting line in particular, we've been very open to and encourage. And we wanted to be more explicit about that when COVID hit, which is why we created this frontline worker and adult wellness portal. And so we also have really worked hard to make sure that we have resources on our website for caring adults. So if you were to go to our website and look under Get Involved, there's a specific section there for adults to learn how to do support work and also get that support that they need to.
Nice. So I'm just going to pull that back up because I think it's super key. So where would I go? So I'm on
Absolutely. I'll take you on a tour. So if you go into Get Involved, which is at the top toolbar, right there. And then if you go over to programs and resources.
Oh, nice.
You'll have resources there for caring adults.
What I love is that you do get really specific, right? And so, supporting our Indigenous youths, Arabic speaking youth, and of course, BIPOC youth, anything to do with BMC, our whole goal and objective is to be culturally relevant. So I love seeing that there is emphasis towards, talking about the topics that are affecting BIPOC youth. So kudos to everyone at Kids Help Phone who is staying on top of the topics that are relevant to Black kids. It should be relevant to all kids, but it's probably certain topics are specifically more extra relevant to Black kids for sure.
Of course. And we have an amazing team, not just of counselors, not just of crisis responders all across Canada, but we also have internal people working in editorial, making sure those articles come out and are very relevant. So of course, around May 25th, when George Floyd was murdered, we immediately wanted to respond and make sure that we had resources available in order to best support people who are reaching out. And around that time, we did know from the data that came that young people who were reaching out to us around racial issues, seeing racial injustices, were some of our most distressed texters. And we know that, but having that data there to back that up, and then making sure that the resources that we provide are responsive to that was very important.
No, absolutely. That's amazing. Amazing. I will champion and celebrate that until the cows come home. That sentence is so bizarre because they don't compare. Like, where are cows really going?
Not in Toronto.
Exactly. So bringing it back. So we have parents who have kids of various ages. What is the age range of kids that are usually calling into Kids Help Phone?
Absolutely. So people of all age ranges can reach out. I believe the articles on our website usually want to make sure that anyone who is around 8 years old is able to read it and really get something meaningful out of it. But we have had, kids as young as 6 or 7 texting in, and, everything above that. Right? If you can get on the computer, if you have access to a phone or a cell phone, we are happy to speak to folks. A lot of the people that we talk to are young adults, but truly we have hundreds of people reaching out every day, and they cover all age ranges.
Nice. So you had mentioned earlier about volunteers. So can you tell me a little bit about the people who are on the receiving end of these text messages and phone calls from parents and kids alike?
Oh my goodness, yes. So our volunteers are absolutely spectacular. I cannot say enough good things about them, and can't emphasize enough how proud I am, and how proud our organization is to be able to have such a massive volunteer base who's wanting to do this work and does it really well. So we have people from every single province in Canada who have reached out, and they have all backgrounds. So we have students, we have retirees, we have teachers, people who are in sports, people who have a long history in mental health, and people with absolutely no experience. And so what really ties all of our volunteer crisis responders together is that they have a passion to support people. When they come into Kids Help Phone, they do a 36-hour training that gives them the skills they need to be able to do crisis work on our platform. They all work from home. And they work 24, have availability to work 24/7. So they're always on and always supporting folks around Canada. And when they are doing the work, they're supported remotely by supervisors with clinical background.
Wow. So this whole thing is powered by community, really.
Yes.
At the end of the day, it's people who have an interest and have, obviously some sort of background with additional training in supporting these kids. And like, really think about 30 years. That's a really long period of time that Kids Help Phone has even been around. And so, the fact that you guys are so really quick to adapt to the times, right? You went from phone to text because that's what kids are doing. And then you went and said, hey, we want to be able to support the parents as well. So, keeping in theme with the idea of community, how can parents, assist with the mental, other than say, if you're having an issue, call Kids Help Phone, right? How can parents be a part of this team that is, charged with the physical and mental health of their children?
Of course. So right now we've actually had such an incredible outpouring of support that our volunteer submissions are closed until 2021 because we are flush with volunteers right now, which is amazing. Yeah, we've had such a great response from folks. But I think, all parents want to be there for their kids, right? And if parents are hearing their children saying that they have anxiety or that they're scared or that they're struggling with their mental health, it means they're already doing this incredible job where their kids feel open to sharing something so vulnerable. Not everyone is feels comfortable opening up to their parents. And that's something that we see a lot on our chat lines and our phone lines, people telling us that they've never opened up about what's on their mind and what's in their heart. So if parents are hearing these things, that is incredible. So I think being able to open that safe and supportive space where they are giving their kids a place to just, without judgment, share what's going on and just listening, I think that's a really powerful place to start. And then one thing that is really important for us in the texting department and in the counseling department, of course, is not necessarily giving advice, but really asking and empowering young people to say what they need. And then as a parent or like a safe adult, is finding ways to advocate and to meet those needs. But I think just providing a safe space where they feel able to open up and then and be able to work with them is the biggest thing. It's what we offer, but I think it's what parents intuitively offer too.
And you make a really good point, and I've mentioned this before when, I was doing a whole bunch of like media requests and like, how do we talk to our children about race? And I was just like, meet your kids where they are. And if your kids ask you a question, you have to resist the urge. I know parents, we want to be the first, and we want to be our children's Google. We want to be able to always have the answers for them. That is not realistic. and it's putting undue burden and pressures on you as a parent. So I'm like, if they ask you a question, I don't know is a perfectly good answer. But you don't have to just say, I don't know, and like make them walk away. Just say, I don't know, but let's find out together. Let's go to this website. Let's figure out some ways. Let's see if there's books available, or if there's an app or something that might help you with the problem or the question that you have. So I think that that's really important in terms of, if you're, and you made a really good point as well, as you are your children's first safe space. And if they're coming to you, and it might not be the words, "Mommy, I'm anxious today," they might, they might revert back and, can I sleep with you tonight? Yes. Right? That be a way that it shows up, or, so can you talk to like other ways that, other kind of cues that children usually give their parents to show that they're kind of not in crisis, but like that they're having some sort of emotional issue. They might not say, I'm angry, but it might show up in other ways.
Absolutely. So I love that you kind of pointed out that it puts a ton of pressure on parents to just be the font of information and know everything. And I don't think that's realistic, and I don't think it's fair for parents. I think it's an expectation that the world puts on parents' shoulders, but it's not something that is realistic, and that's why hopefully there's supports available. Now, if parents are concerned and want to keep their eyes out for red flags, honestly, parents know their children best. But one thing that you can really look for is change. Right? Change from that norm that you're used to seeing in your kid. So yeah, can I sleep with you tonight? Right? That kind of regression, or that need for more care. But also things like, are they eating differently? Are they eating more or less? They might not have language to say, I'm feeling depressed or I'm feeling anxious. That might not be somewhere that they're at developmentally, or it might not be culturally something that they hear a lot or have a lot of information about. But maybe they're having tummy aches a lot, right? Or maybe they have, they're saying they have headaches or are feeling sick. Maybe they're not wanting to connect with their friends as much, right? They're isolating. So keeping an eye out for those changes in your child. And if you're noticing that, checking in, right? Hey, I've noticed this. What's going on with you? Are you feeling this way? And asking those open-ended questions and giving them that space to process with you. And then you can start looking for resources and support and providing that care that they deserve.
No, that's great. I think that, COVID has turned us, as I was talking about earlier, into multiple titles that we were not expected to hold, right? We're teachers without having the background and education of becoming a teacher. And we're psychologists, and we have to monitor the mental health and emotional health of our kids, but it's not going to look the same from child to child. Even if you yourself have multiple children, everything in that family is going to be managing COVID and their anxiety and their mental health in different ways, and it's going to manifest differently. So, just learning to pick up on the cues. A lot of us parents are complaining about these kids are eating us out of house and home, but I didn't think about the fact that might be,
a form of comfort, maybe.
Right. And something that he's using to regain some sense of control. Like, well, at least I can control what I put in my body if I can't control where I'm going. It never occurred to me. So now I have to start thinking about being kinder towards him in terms of his constant hunger. Thinking that you're just eating because you're bored. Right. And it might not be boredom. It might be like sadness. Mm-hmm. And kids do the exact same thing that adults do. How many adults have just gone to the kitchen and the fridge every 14 seconds expecting something new to show up, and it never does?
Tanya, Yeah, that's such an amazing point. And, even as adults, we really have to work hard and intentionally to make sure that we have coping strategies when we're under stress, right? And our kids don't necessarily have that. We see people reaching out all the time, just not quite sure how to cope. And of course, if they're reaching out for help, or if they are, doing things like something in them is saying, I'm sad, I need something, and they're eating, or they're, spending more time distracting themselves on the phone, or, more screen time. I'm sure a lot of folks have seen an increase in how much time is spent on iPads, or, but those are coping strategies, right? And it's really amazing. And it's actually very wise that, people of all ages are intuitively finding ways to self-soothe. So I think another thing that parents can do is really work and help their kids find coping strategies that work for them, that are, that work better maybe than things that might, make them feel uncomfortable, or even err towards being like painful or harmful.
For sure, for sure. And so, like, pivoting to the parents, what are some of the types of someone in the comments said, facts, I ate all the snacks. Trust me, it's been a huge thing and stuff like that. And the fact that you mentioned at the top of this chat that body image and eating is becoming a topic that is being texted and called in about, it makes so much sense. I'm just like, I just had a realization about where my body is at. I hadn't really sat and thought about it, because I'm just like, I'm wearing the same like track comfy pants. I don't go anywhere. And then I went somewhere and I picture taken, and I was like, oh no, the COVID-15 is not 15. So there's a question in the comments, which if you, wherever you're watching from, drop your comments and questions. I will be moderating. I probably should have said that 26 minutes and 33 seconds ago, but I'm saying it now. So feel free to drop us questions. We're here to answer your questions as well as my own. So someone asked, are there guides for helping kids through, I guess, whatever mental, emotional health based on age group?
Oh, that's a great question. Now, we actually don't break up support into different age groups, because a lot of times the support that we give is relevant across a broad spectrum. So what we really advise people to do generally, and it's the same formula that we follow when we give support at Kids Help Phone, is to ask questions, give people space to open up, and then provide resources based off of specifically what they say. So really making sure that you're doing that active listening, and then finding what could work and problem solving based off of that. Our website actually has a number of resources. So for caring adults, but also how do you support somebody in crisis? How do you support someone with suicidal thoughts or who's dealing with self-harm? And those steps that they'll list there will work for people who are, young kids. They'll work for teenagers. They'll work for adults. You may have to tweak them based off of your knowledge of that individual, but in general, the work looks the same, because being somebody who provides a form of connection, being somebody who listens without judgment, that is so healing in and of itself.
Absolutely.
We also have a really amazing resource called Resources Around Me. And so if you or your kid is looking for support outside of just an article or talking to somebody on the phone or via text, it will actually link you to organizations and supports that are local to you.
Oh, nice. So how would I get to that anywhere on the website? I'm showing the website right now just so that people can see. So that would be something that I would find on the Kids Help Phone website?
Yeah. So what's really cool about the website is we have a great search function. So right beside donate, just there's a little magnifying glass, and you can search Resources Around Me.
Resources around me. Oh, dig it. Digging it. I like doing these things in real time, versus like kind of a slideshow, because people need to see literally where they're supposed to go. So find a youth program near you.
And I
Oh,
think it also just highlights how easy to use the site is, right? We wanted to make sure that, not just technologically savvy young people can use it, but genuinely people of all ages are able to easily access all of the different tools and articles and resources that we have available.
nice. Nice. And I think that that's, it was a really great question, because I think, it's just thinking that that particular person who commented, they want to be able to, support their kids as well, right? Because at the end of the day, we don't want anyone to think that Kids Help Phone should be their only and primary resource for mental health supports. You are still your child's primary mental and emotional health resource. Same with your family doctor. But Kids Help Phone is an amazing tool, an amazing resource, with like it kind of as a domino effect, right?
Yes.
Kids Help Phone, the website, or texting and calling, whether it's kids or parents, but then they will be able to say, but there's more out here than just us, and there might be things
Mm-hmm.
local to you. So definitely, visit the website, which is at the bottom of the screen right there, and really take a look around. It's really friendly to use, and I know that was done on purpose. The fonts and the colors and stuff. I'm a branding nerd, so I like that. But really to make it as easy as possible. And then in terms of like access, I believe that Kids Help Phone, the phone is both French and English. And then are there other languages that are supported across other platforms?
That's a great question. So our service is fully bilingual, French and English. So that is our texting service as well as our phone service. But what's so exciting is that we recently introduced an Arabic pilot. So we want to make sure that if people call in, so this is for our phone service with our professional counselors, that folks who are speaking Arabic are able to also get that service. And so I believe that's done through translation, but people can look into our website for more information on that.
That's amazing. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love how both reactive and proactive that
Yeah.
Kids Help Phone is, right? They're thinking about who's using the service and what are the ways that we can best meet their needs where they are. And they're just like, they're looking ahead and behind at the same time. As you can tell, I'm a big fan of BMC, so I'm just going to gush over you for the next little bit. So, switching gears in terms of the Black community specifically, uh,
Yeah.
why you and I are on having this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a hot topic. We have Bell Let's Talk Day, and Bell is one of the four founding sponsors. I still remember that from my ambassador days. Because Bell Phone made sense. But there's still stigma, and there's
Yeah.
still a ton of stigmas, and particularly in the Black community, we don't have a lot of conversations, or we're afraid to have conversations about mental health for ourselves, much less our kids. So how can we, start breaking through that?
Totally. Mental health has been stigmatized for a long time, right? Since its inception. I think that we are getting to a place in our communities where we are getting better. We're moving towards a place where these are conversations that are happening on TV, they're happening online, they're happening on Instagram, right? So, but that doesn't change the fact that stigma still exists, right? And different communities respond to that differently. I think one of the best ways to reduce that stigma is just shining light on, the things that we are afraid to talk about, right? And kind of dispelling that fear. So saying things like, I'm depressed, or I feel suicidal, or, I'm really anxious, that is a huge step. It's a really scary thing to do. But if we have conversations around mental health that don't have to be, we don't have to have them only at crisis points. We can have small check-ins and take those tiny steps until we feel more comfortable as a family, between friends, and as a larger community, to be able to say those harder things. So I think starting small and not putting so much pressure on us at getting it right every single time, right? We just need to be open to making those steps. I also think that it's important for us to have, role models in our community, right? And to have culturally relevant services. So, one of the things that we're doing at Kids Help Phone is making sure that that we're trying our best to get it right, that we're putting in the work to make sure that that racism is not something that's impacting our work. And so we are internally making sure that that our hiring processes, that our documentation, that the way that we speak to one another actually comes from a place of equity and celebration. And I think that kind of thing will trickle into the work that we do. And so that's on an organizational level, but I think it's very similar to how communities and families work too.
Absolutely. And, I think that that's super important to mention. And, you said my trigger words, my good trigger words, culturally relevant, because I think it's important to know that, not all kids are, there's no monolith, right?
No.
Help phone, sure, but they're all coming at you with various things. And so, like I mentioned, like seeing on your website that you are speaking specifically in a way to Indigenous youth and to BIPOC and Black and youth of color, LGBTQ, the issues they're not all equal. A child on an Indigenous reserve is very different from a child living at Jane and Finch and a queer youth on Church Street in Toronto. So, it's really important to just really kind of consider that. So I guess, one of my kind of final questions before we open it up and start wrapping up is, what are you hopeful for in terms of the future of the topic of mental health?
Absolutely. So mental health exists on a spectrum, and so we're always going to have mental health, whether it is great, whether we're having a great mental health day, or our mental health is something that we're struggling with. And so I wish I could say that I hope that nobody ever feels depressed again, right? But that's not realistic. What I actually do hope is that we get to a place where everybody who has a need is having that need met quickly, when they need it and in the way that they need it specifically. So, just a few seconds ago, we're talking about how, there's no monolith, right? People do deserve to have service and support that meets their individual needs and sees them as a person and not just a number or a statistic or as a stereotype. And I think that we're making good progress towards that, and I hope that we continue on in that direction. Right now, I know something that we struggle with across the country are things like wait times, getting affordable service, getting service that that can see people for who they are, whether that's their gender, their race, their class, their ability. And one of the reasons I'm so proud of working with Kids Help Phone is that I think that we meet a lot of those needs. And I hope that that's something that we can continue to do better and for a really long, long time.
Nice. So I made it seem like we were ending the chat, but I also realized that I didn't actually get to the back to school part.
Oh my goodness, that's why we're here.
That's why we're here. I'm a great moderator. I promise. I was just kidding, y'all. I was just kidding. So I guess, and also I probably put it out of my brain because every day the story about back to school changes. So I'm just like, I don't even know. I've literally thrown my hands up in terms of what is even actually happening. And, trying to be patient has government entities that are not used to working together have to now work together. But, are you seeing a lot of calls in terms of kids who are anxious about going back? I'm thinking about the kids who school wasn't a safe space for them and they don't want to go back. Right? Maybe they were bullied, or maybe they didn't like their teacher, or, there was a particular kid in the school that wasn't nice to them or whatever. So what is Kids Help Phone seeing in terms of, back to school.
Totally. So people are reaching out to us right now about going back to school. It's definitely something that is on so many people's minds, young people, parents, teachers. Everyone is wondering what is going to happen next. And I don't think that level of uncertainty is something that has happened really. Most people know that, September means you're back in the classroom, and, this is an unprecedented time. And so what's been really interesting is that, young people reach out for all different reasons. Maybe they're reaching out to talk about family stuff, friend stuff, but we've included an option at the end of conversations and ask them, are you thinking about school? Are you feeling stressed about it? And 77% of the young people who have reached out to us have said that they are feeling distress around back to school. So regardless of what they reach out to us about, they are still having that stress in the back of their minds. And that's a lot of our texters. A lot of them are also worried about school closures or what school's going to look like. And of course, those feelings of isolation still. They're feeling lonely and not sure what to expect when September comes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the thing is for people who already had anxiety, this has been, this exasperates it. But, I think that COVID has brought on new anxieties, people who are very, we're very cyclical. Even I stopped being in school years ago, but back to school means new notebooks for me and new pens and pencils also for me. And, it's the last quarter of the year. So it's kind of like a New Year's, or the second New Year's of the year for me usually. And so now, like, not knowing what that means and so much uncertainty and lack of control. So I love this back to school checklist
Yes.
that was provided to me before this call. So walk me through, this checklist in terms of what is the positioning? Is it like me as a kid or me as a parent? Or is it just for anybody?
Yeah, so I think this works for anyone, right? There are people who are going back to school who are college students. There are adults going back to school. There are really young kids. And so we wanted to make sure that they have those resources that they need. And so this checklist is amazing. We worked really hard to put this together. So this is, what do you need? It doesn't just say, get your pens and pencils ready, but, check your school board's website and find out what they're saying. So there's so many questions. We are not able to capture what will be relevant to each student or each parent. But what we can do is provide resources for how do you get that information? How do you make sure that you are making the most informed decisions for yourself and for your family?
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask, so what other types of, resources? I know that, there's a ton, and I think that that's probably something that overwhelms people. It's just like, where do I start? What's the best way? So, in terms of the conversation about back to school, I love this. I love a checklist, but I'm also an explainer, so you can't. I'm like, ooh, checklists. It means something to print out, actually, like, check mark. I take pleasure in the simple things. But are there other back to school particular resources that are out there on the website, or, has obviously the phone and the text services are always available. But yeah.
Yeah, Tanya. So we have on our website provided articles, not just for kids. So I think the one that you pulled up was specifically for young people. But on our caring adults section too, we have ways to support your kid in going back to school. And I think, parents are worried for their kids, right? They want to make sure that their kids are safe. They want to make sure that their kids are doing well. And so we wanted to make sure that all of those are available. I also think that, checking your school board, looking into your provincial or your municipal, guidelines around back to school and health is going to be really important to be able to make a decision for your family that you feel comfortable with. And so always, we're going to start with saying things like open a conversation, right? Like what feels best for you? What are the worries? What are the needs? And then I'm sure this will feel great to you, making that plan, right? Listing out what that looks like in particular. What is great about this article that you pulled up is it's actually a PDF. So you can scroll down on the website and see all of the different, the 3 different tips, but you can also pull it up as a PDF and save it.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm. And as you can see here, it's not just start an open conversation and expect people to know how to do that. We actually have resources to show you how to get there. Because, the language of empathy and support is not one that comes naturally to, I want to say many of us, but I almost want to say any of us, right? Mm-hmm. Those are not skills that we're born with. And, unfortunately in our society, it's not something that we get a chance to practice all the time. So we want to make sure people know how to do things like have an open conversation or share space with a young person.
Nice. I love that. I really do. I think it's so key. That it's simple and easy to navigate, because like you said, like, okay, open a conversation, and some people are just used to I'm supposed to be in a store buying a backpack and new shoes again, and and choosing between a Chromebook and a MacBook, not dealing with, are schools even going to open? And if they're going to open, is it going to be safe to go? And if I choose to send my child, because I think that's one of the biggest conversations right now, if I choose to send my child, am I going to be deemed as a bad parent? Am I going to be judged? All these kinds of things. What is the risk of that? So,
and I just want to say that, all parents, and especially moms, but especially, moms of color and Black moms, there's so much judgment, right? There's so much pressure, and that comes from, outside and like inside as well. And so I just want to personally, and, I'm sure as an organization, just validate, right? That you're doing the work, and that the decisions that you make are going to be in the best interest of your family, and the choices are up to you, right? Like that power is in your hands, and you can. The choice that you make is going to be the best one for your family and for yourself.
Nice, thank you for that, because I think it's just there's no. I just keep saying to people who will listen, there's no right or wrong decision here. No. There's no one way. Well, there's never been one way to parent. No. And there's no one way to parent during a global health pandemic. Mm-hmm. Which also, let's just throw in some racial injustice movements in there as well for a little razzle-dazzle. Like, there's a lot happening. And so whatever you choose to do and whatever decision that you decide to make for your children, that was the best decision.
For sure.
With your kids in mind, with the health and health, wealth, and safety of your whole family. Because there's going to be a ton of parents who have to send their kids back because they have to go back to work. Because we do not want to go into a fall or winter and, be evicted because we haven't been able to pay rent, because we haven't been able to go back to work, right? Like, these are real tangible reasons why someone might choose to send their children back. So there's a comment with a whole bunch of questions. So I'm going to read them out individually. Any advice for coping mechanisms for parents as we shift back to school? So in terms of, I guess, maybe the parents are going back to work and the kids are going back to school.
So coping strategies for sure. I think that parents just need to be easy on themselves too, right? Thinking about that pressure that they're under, all of the different roles that you're juggling right now, parenting, teaching, working, so much, and kind of letting go of those feelings of perfection and needing to always get it right or always, be on the ball, and giving yourself some space to be imperfect and take time for yourself. I know moms are always running, right? They're always caring for someone. And so something that we want to emphasize all the time is that you deserve self-care. And even like more than that, it's really tough to pour from an empty cup, right? So finding self-care strategies that feel good for you, whether it is making sure you hydrate, making sure that you have 10 minutes to have a hot cup of coffee, rather one that has been microwaved 1,000 times. Can you get some space away from your family and have a little bit of alone time, whether that's in, the bathtub for 20 minutes or, going for a walk, making those decisions that feel good for you and also feel safe for you. I think is going to be important.
Absolutely. Yes. Getting away from the family. I don't know what that means, but it sounds nice in theory. It really does.
Isolation is something that people have been struggling with, but another thing that people have really been struggling with is, that lack of ability to get away, right? And I think that all of us need to have a little bit of balance of that for our best mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, for me, I work from home, so in regular times, there's children in school and there's people at work, and I'm just like, silence. And so it was a huge adjustment to get used to the being constantly surrounded by people. Mm-hmm. And so then it shifted, when I was sleeping, because I'm like, well, the quietest it's going to be is when everybody is sleeping. Yeah. And so, then I'm working from 9 p.m. until, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then it just jacks up my sleep because 7-year-olds don't know how to sleep in to save their lives. I can't wait until he's a teenager and that's all he wants to do. But, it's really important just to kind of think about the like you said, like the isolation. If you live by yourself, I can't fathom the constant lack of sound and noise and peopling. But then there's the flip side of the constant peopling.
Yeah. So there's no one prescription that I could give or anyone could give that will work for everyone. But one thing that I think we don't do enough is sit down and reflect and assess our needs, right? And so even if you can take a little bit of time, maybe write a list of what do you need in this moment, or even if it's, dream big, right? But also, what are the tiny little things that you can do that might help you just get through this moment? Because sometimes that's all we can do, right? We can't skip ahead until the pandemic's over. We can't skip ahead until school is over. We can kind of just get through this one little step at a time.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And then one of the other questions that was asked by so they asked about the signs of stress, which we did mention earlier in this, and this is going to be available on all the platforms, YouTube, Facebook group, Facebook page, to replay and review and share widely. So definitely take a look at that. And then one of the questions, what is the best way to step through this new version of school, especially with multiple kids? I think that that's probably one of the biggest concerns for parents who do have, I only have the one, thankfully, so I don't have to think about, access to a computer at this time. And, younger kids need more time than the older kids, but the older kids still need time. And that's if they're still at home, maybe you're sending one instead of both kids back. Maybe you're not sending either of them. So how do parents of multiples, shout out to the parents of multiple children, navigate this?
Oh my goodness. So thank you. Shout out to parents of, parents in general, and also parents of many kids. You are moving the world. You're moving and growing and supporting the world, like literally and figuratively. And, I hate to say it, I'm not a parent. And so, but I can say that I know that parents and moms are planners, right? Planning is likely what gets you through the days and the years. And I think that's going to be the same for managing a big household during a time of uncertainty. What can you plan for in advance so that you're not scrambling when the time comes? So making sure that the information that's available is information that you're accessing. That's going to look different across different school boards in different cities. What do you have? who's giving you the support, right? Like to computers, to technology, to masks, to safety equipment, and how can you best plan for that in advance? Also giving yourself a little bit of buffer, and being gentle with yourself and your family. And I think leaving room for lots of conversation, because kids are going to react differently. You might have a 5-year-old who's stoked to go back to school, and you might have an 11-year-old who wants nothing about that. So being able to really understand where each person is coming from, and have those conversations individually and as a family, to see like how we can get through this moment together.
I think it was a great answer, because at the end of the day, there's so few answers. And you were able to actually give one that I think is super helpful. And, if I, in a hypothetical Tanya world, I have 2 children and one doesn't want to go back and one does, then, the goal is to always meet your kids where they are. So encourage. It's like, okay, well, we're going to all walk this 5-year-old who's 5, you're in SK, I think, or grade 1. So it's just like, of course they're excited to go back to school. They still love school at that point. Whereas the teenagers, it's like, I don't want to have anything to do with going back to school. Okay, well then, I think there's some positive. I'm always trying to look at silver linings. Always. Yeah. And one of the positives of COVID is that finally kids are going to be able to learn in the way that suits them best. Right? There's kids who need the book and the in-person and love love their teachers and love going to class and love being in the classroom. And then there's kids who hate group projects and hate even being surrounded by people and are perfectly fine to read a whole book, do a whole essay, and turn it in. So if there's anything, especially in a lot of times there's a lot of stigma going into schools and seeking additional supports. Trust me, I get it. As a Black mom, there's a lot of things that we don't want to do with these school boards because they're going to pigeonhole and they're going to, try to do things and stream our kids in lower streams and, not label them as gifted or academically advanced or whatever it's called now. All these things, but, independent, what are IEPs? Independent education plans, I think. They're not the devil. They're there to create the best possible way for your children to learn, but they can't get one if you don't seek one. And we have to put sometimes we have to put our fear aside, but talk to people, talk to teachers, talk to school administrators, anyone that you might know before you do it, about the expectations. Text Kids Help Phone, be like, hey, how can I navigate? What are the questions I'm supposed to ask a board or a school in terms of getting my child an IEP and the best, learning plan for them? We all want our kids to learn best. We all want them, we want them to learn. I'm not teaching my son math. I'm not teaching him multiplication. I don't have the patience. I can't do it. Right? I need teachers. It's a collaborative process, the teaching and the education. So hopefully, this conversation, it went by so fast. I was just like, oh, we have extra time. And then I was just like, wait, there's more questions. And now we're at like 57 minutes in. But I'm hoping that parents, really take to heart that Kids Help Phone, this is what they do, is help. And, first and foremost is the kids. And so if you are feeling overwhelmed by your kids' anxiety and their depression and their sadness, or their whatever stress manifests and looks like for your children, Kids Help Phone is there by phone. It's there by text. It's there if they're 5. It's there if they're that times 5. Wait, 5 + 5 is 25. Yes. So yes. I do that math. But, and then they're also they're there for you as a parent. And I speak highly of the village. It still takes a village to raise a child. Parents need support. If you're a single parent, if you're married, if your partner is stuck across the border, whatever it is, there are tools and resources. And, you can start at Kids Help Phone and work your way outwards to things that are local and relevant to you, where you live. And, hopefully, now you have something else in your toolbox that will help you get through the days as we get closer to an alleged back to school start.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I think that, people don't have to just reach out because, they want to know what to do with their kids. You can reach out because you need somebody to talk to. You need, somebody who's not a 5-year-old to just talk to for a little while and get some of that sanity back. And we're here for conversations like that. We are here if you're feeling like you're at your wit's end and you really need some crisis support and everything in between. And I've seen some really great tips. Parents have actually put the kids' help phone number, 686868 if they're texting, or 1-800-668-6868 to call in, and just preloaded those into their kids' phones, right? So that it's actually right there for them. But yeah, like moms, reach out to us. We are here. And there are so many resources that we can connect you with beyond just, having a conversation. But it's 24/7. It is free by texting. Yeah.
Awesome. Tamar, thank you so very much. And shout out to Michelle and Jeffrey at the Kids Help Phone team for helping us put this together. I hope this was informative and helpful. I know it was definitely for me. I know Kids Help Phone, I've known of it half my life. But I had no idea up until literally 3 weeks ago that there was parental supports. I'm on my phone from the time I wake up until the time I close my eyes. So one text message to be like, I am struggling with my own ex or my child's ex, and I need some help. And it's not you texting your friends who are going through their own stuff. It's people who are trained, qualified, energetic, and eager to help. And they're there as a resource to use. So definitely use them. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. And the website kidshelpphone.ca is at the bottom. The parent text support line 741-741. I just put a dash in there just so that people can read it easier, but there's no dash when you're texting them. And yes, happy Wednesday. Happy almost end of August. And should there be a back to school, happy back to school season.
Thank you so much for having Kids Help Phone and myself here. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I just want to say, you have got it. Moms, you have got it. And you're doing a great job under tough circumstances. So thank you to all of you.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Have a great day.
Take care. Bye-bye.